right, so Chapter 11, Section 8 is Samples and Surveys. Just for fun, let's put notes on here so that you can tell me what it is, what activity you're doing. Our learning objective is to identify sampling methods and to recognize bias in samples and surveys. A population is all the members of a set, and a sample is a part of a population. If you determine a sample carefully, the statistics for the sample can be used to make general conclusions about the larger population. If you don't determine a sample carefully and you find a crazy outlier, then that is not a very good representation of general population. So it's really important how we sample. So for a convenience sample, you select any members of a population who are conveniently and readily available. Can you see any downside to a convenient sample? All right, for a self-selected sample, select only members of the population who volunteer for the sample. So in this case, self-selected members who volunteer for the sample. So a convenient sample, you're hitting up anybody in your particular location. A self-selected sample is, I'm sure you guys get the emails that say, take this survey and click here. And if you click and actually take the survey, or I've done it on the phone where they say, would you like to take a survey at the end of this phone call and tell us how we're doing? That is self-selected. A systematic sample order the population in some way and then select it at regular intervals. Like jury duty. Everybody who registers to vote gets selected for jury duty. And then our random sample is all the members of a population are equally likely to be chosen. So think about which one of these would create a fair survey. And it could depend upon what you're trying to survey. So samples vary in how well they reflect a population. A sample has a bias when a part of a population is overrepresented or underrepresented. A bias is a systematic error introduced by the sampling method. So let's take a look at some sampling methods. A newspaper wants to find out what % of a city population favors a property increase to raise money for local parks. What is the sampling method used for each situation? Does the sample have bias? And explain. So the first scenario is a newspaper article on the tax increase invites readers to express their opinions on the newspaper's website. This is a self-selected sample. It might have a bias depending on who visits the website. The people who respond may overrepresent or underrepresent some views. For example, some property owners who are against the tax might organize a campaign to get friends and neighbors to visit the website. We've all been a part of that where, oh, vote for our school for Game of the Week. So go on and vote. Well, that's a self-selected survey. A reporter interviews people leaving the city's largest park. This is a convenient sample. Since it's convenient for the reporter to stay in one place, because the location is near the park, the sample may overrepresent park supporters, and the results will have bias. A survey service calls every 50th listing from the local phone book. This is a systematic sample because the phone listing is ordered alphabetically. The regular sampling interval is every 50 listings. This sample may have a bias if there's some link between people who are listed or not listed in the phone book and people who pay property taxes. Because as people of your generation may say, what is a phone book? It's that. It's a database with people's phone numbers in it. It's crazy. It's not in your phone. It's a book with paper. You turn them. Look up. Okay, so let's look at this to see if we can identify how the survey rolls out. So our guided is to survey the eating habits of the community. Employees of a local television station interview people visiting a food court in the mall. What sampling method are they using? Does the sample have bias? Explain. So what do you guys think for A? It is definite. I agree with convenience. Do y'all agree? Convenience? And do you guys think it has a bias? What are they? Let's see what they're asking about again. Survey the eating habits of a community. So they go to a food court in the mall. Do the people eating at the food court in a mall represent eating habits of a community? What do you think, Anna? What's the downside of that?
Who go to the mall, not always just people in that community.
Right. Right. So the sample will have a bias. Since not everyone from the community may frequent the mall. And what kind of food is in a mall food court? And there is a mostly fast food. And the people who purchase, and I don't judge fast food, may be overrepresented in this sample. All right. So let's look at our study methods. So the different types of methods are observational study. Thankfully, it's the same. It's where you observe members of a sample in such a way that they are not affected by the study. A controlled experiment is when you divide the sample into two groups. You impose a treatment on one group, but not on the other control group. Then you compare the effect on the treated group to the control group. In a survey, you ask every member of the sample a set of questions. All right, so let's take a look at how this will appear to you in your work. Analyzing study methods. Which type of study method is described in each situation? So should the sample statistics be used to make a general conclusion about the population? Researchers randomly choose two groups from 10 volunteers. Over a period of 8 weeks, one group eats ice cream before going to sleep, the other does not. Volunteers wear monitoring devices while sleeping, and researchers record dream activity. This is a controlled experiment. The statistics for this study are based on such a small sample that the findings are unreliable as a general conclusions. they only have 8 volunteers and they split 10 volunteers and they split those into 2 groups. That's 5 people per group. It's not a big sampling size. B says, students in a science class record the height of bean plants as they grow. This is an observational study. They're not touching the beans. The statistics may provide a general conclusion about the growth rate of a bean plant. However, soil type, amount of sunlight and water, fertilizer, and other factors could affect the growth rate. Student council members ask every 10th student in the lunch line if they like the cafeteria food. This is a survey. The results are not reliable because people waiting in line are more likely to enjoy cafeteria food than those who brought their lunch from home. So let's look and see how this, no. All right, so a pharmaceutical company asks for volunteers to test a new drug to treat high blood pressure. Half the volunteers will be given the drug, half will be given a placebo. What does that mean for this testing group? It's a control sample. The researcher will monitor the blood pressure of each volunteer. Which type of study method is the researcher using? Should sample statistics be used to make a general conclusion about the effectiveness of the larger population? Explain. Should the sample statistics be used to make a general conclusion? Do we have enough volunteers? They don't tell us how many, so we need a large population size before we can draw a conclusion about the effectiveness.